I secretly hate my husband, but I can't leave him. Disclaimers in on my story time on Instagram. My husband and I have only been married for 2 months. We dated on and off for almost 7 years. So when he finally proposed, I was actually really happy. The problem is that we never lived together before we got married. He never wanted to move in with me when we were dating. He also had this thing where he wouldn't want me to come to his apartment randomly. He would always schedule times where I could hang out with him at his apartment. This all seems suspicious, but I really wanted to marry him, so I just decided to overlook those things. But now that we're married, I see why he didn't want me to come over and why he had all these strange rules. It turns out that he's incredibly messy, lazy, and is super picky about the food he eats. So now that I'm his wife, I'm constantly having to clean up after him. Every single time he goes to the toilet, he always leaves skid marks, or for some reason, he always has like explosive poop and it goes everywhere on the bowl. So every single time I go to the bathroom after he does, I'm always having to clean it up. And it makes me so angry that I have to clean up after him that I have begun to hate him. Also, he's super picky about his food. We can never go to restaurants because he never wants anything on the menu. And if we ever do go to a restaurant, we have to go wherever he wants. I love all types of cuisine, especially Indian, Mediterranean, Japanese, but he thinks it's gross. He comes from a very American family. He grew up eating chicken nuggets and grilled cheeses. To him, anything with some spice is way too much. That means I can't cook what I want because he always complains about the smell. Thankfully, he's got an office that's 30 minutes away, so when he leaves, that's when I cook. But I have to make sure to air out the apartment before he gets home. I'm always doing his laundry and cleaning up after him. Every single time he shaves, he leaves hair everywhere. I actually hate this man now. I told him that I don't want to live with him anymore, but he freaked out. He's begging for me to stay, but I'm so unhappy. What should I do?
Am I wrong for walking out of the baby shower my in-laws threw for me? The situation is kind of a mess. I, 27 female, and expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, and they said that if the baby is a boy, then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer, and I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. I didn't like that, but went with it to keep the peace. They thought if they do some hubba lubba, they can decide the baby's gender. Doctor appointment came and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, then turned his phone off to hide from his family, then finally told them. If my husband cried tears of sadness that we were having a girl, not a boy, I would be livid. Continue. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me because my daughter deserved to be celebrated. They ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting constantly, referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and basically pretending it's a boy. I had several fights with them, and after they refused to stop, my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy, but when I arrived, I saw blue balloons, blue cake, and father-in-law's name/decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. My sister-in-law explained that they were still hoping that my gender results are false and it's a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusional and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl, not a boy, as they expected and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I told him to wake up and see the insanity to his family's behavior. I said absolutely not and demanded he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home until I get my ass over and apologize for ruining everything they've done for me and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet, but he's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else.
This is probably the most tragic and preventable airplane accident you'll ever hear about. The facts of this story are so shocking that when the audio of what led to the disaster was discovered, investigators and airline officials couldn't believe their ears. The audio of this disaster is so unsettling, but I will include it at the end of this story. On March 23, 1994, Aeroflight 593 was on its way from Russia to Hong Kong. On this flight, there were 63 passengers and 12 crew members, 9 of which were flight attendants. Then there were 3 pilots responsible for flying the plane. 2 of the passengers on board were 16-year-old Elder Kudrinsky and 12-year-old Yana Kudrinsky, and they were the son and daughter of Yaroslav Kudrinsky, who was one of the pilots on this plane. Yaroslav was taking his kids on their first international flight, and he was a proud pilot and wanted to show his kids his workplace, but he may have went a little too far. As they were nearing Hong Kong, Yaroslav invited his kids into the cockpit, which is the front of the plane where all of the controls are. This wasn't a problem until Yaroslav Yaroslav encouraged his kids to get into the captain's seat and take turns flying the plane. He would soon regret this decision. Pilot Yaroslav Kudrinsky asked his 12-year-old daughter Yana if she would like to get into the pilot's seat and fly the plane. Yana was a bit scared, but her father encouraged her that it would be fine. Now, Yaroslav wasn't actually going to let her fly the plane. He would only make it seem like she was. Once she got into the pilot's seat, autopilot would be turned on. He would press some controls that would turn the plane slightly to the left, and it would feel like she was actually the one turning the plane to the left. She kind of felt the control handle turning itself, so she knew it wasn't actually her taking control. Once she was done, it was now his 16-year-old son Eldar's turn. Now, when Eldar got into the pilot's seat, his dad messed with controls to make it seem like Eldar was flying the plane just like he did for Yana. Then he put the controls back to normal, which leveled the plane out. Then he left Eldar in the pilot's seat and got distracted and started talking to his daughter Yana. While Yaroslav wasn't paying attention, Eldar was in the pilot's seat, forcing the control handle to go into the direction that he wanted, which was fighting the autopilot, so the autopilot disconnected. Now 16-year-old Eldar is actually in control and is flying the plane. 16-year-old Eldar is in the pilot's seat of Aeroflight 593 while it's in the air after being given permission from his father Yaroslav, who was a pilot on the plane. Eldar accidentally disconnects the autopilot and is now actually in control of flying the plane, which has 75 occupants in total. Yaroslav was completely distracted, so he didn't notice anything was wrong until Eldar asked, "Why is the plane turning?" In which Yaroslav responds, "Is it turning itself?" Eldar responds, "Yes." The plane is now at a sharp 90-degree angle and it keeps turning every second. At this point, Yaroslav should have immediately removed his son from the pilot's seat and took control of the aircraft, but he didn't. He just stood over Eldar in the pilot's seat, looking at the controls, trying to figure out what's wrong. Before they know it, the plane is going down at about 40,000 feet per minute. But the plane is going down at an angle. They're almost upside down. It's like going down the hill of a roller coaster, so they're being pinned back to their seats. Because of the amount of pressure from the plane going down, pinning everyone back to their seats, Eldar is unable to get out of the pilot's seat. Now, all Yaroslav can do is yell demands at his 16-year-old son, who has no knowledge on flying an airplane, so he can try and get the plane back on course before they all crash and die. The plane is being flipped in all different directions, upside down on its side. The passengers are being tossed around like Caesar salad. Eventually, Yaroslav was able to get Eldar out of the seat and take control, but it was too late. The plane lost too much altitude and was flying too low and crashed into some mountains. There were no survivors. And what makes this even worse is that they were only 8 minutes away from their destination. After further investigation, they found that all Eldar had to do to keep the plane from going down was let go of the control handle, and the autopilot would have reconnected itself and set the plane back on course.
I'm 17 and I have a sister named Emma, 22, and a stepsister, Yuna, 22. They never got along well. I literally grew up with my sister talking shit about Yuna and how she just had an easier life because she was pretty. It's never been a secret that my sister thought that, and our parents think that too, so whenever Yuna was here, no one really tried to make an effort with her because she has it easy. I did my best to change this as I grew up, but Emma never did. It actually got worse. Nevertheless, she's still my sister and I love her. Emma also has always been the golden child, so she always got away with lots of stuff. When they were 19, Yuna started dating this guy. I don't want to go into the details, but he was just no good at all. Through this, Yuna stopped working since he said that he wouldn't date a slut. Literally said that in front of us. No one, sadly including me, said anything. She started skipping classes, stopped going out with her friends, and coming to family dinners as often. It was really bad. Recently, they finally broke up though. I don't know what happened and it isn't my business nor anyone else's, but Yuna came to stay with us, so the three of us are living together with our parents again. On Tuesday, we all went out to have dinner when Emma started questioning Yuna about her relationship. Just being there was uncomfortable already, and Yuna would refuse to talk, so Emma kept insisting and our parents were pressuring her to talk too, which was awkward as fuck. It all escalated quickly, and soon enough, Yuna started crying and just left to go outside. I went with her and she was sobbing so violently, I legit thought she would have a panic attack or something. I stayed with her until her Uber came. She didn't want to go with the family, and then went back to the table and I was just raging. Now this is where I might be the asshole. I started screaming at Emma about how she's a bitch and how she knows how hurtful her questions were and how she's always done this, blah blah blah. I also screamed at my parents for allowing it, but mostly I just screamed at Emma. She didn't say or do anything at all and we ended up leaving. My parents are so mad at me and Yuna now, and I was punished. I can't see my friends for a few weeks and Emma just keeps calling me names. I'm not really sorry, but I know I could have handled it better or at least screamed in private, but I also know that I made a huge scene in public and hurt my sister. Am I the asshole for screaming at my sister in the middle of dinner?
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin. These are my bodyguards, Matt and Sal. They come with me wherever I go. At school, at the movie theater, on vacation, at concerts, they are always there. Who do you think they are protecting me from? The answer is myself. You heard that right. My bodyguards are protecting me from myself. What does that even mean? Let me give you an example. 4 years ago, my school organized a field trip to the circus. This was my first time going to the circus. It was so much better than I had expected. There were acrobats doing incredible things in the air, fire eaters, wild animal tamers that shared a cage with their animals. I was watching the show, completely mesmerized because these were brave people like me. Then a man came on to do a bow and arrow act. He was really talented, just like the others. First, he hit a series of balloons tied to a rope. Then, his assistant threw 3 balloons up in the air. He pierced those with his arrows as well. The hardest trick in this act was the last one. The assistant covered the man's eyes with a blindfold. She stood in front of him and put an apple on top of her own head. Everyone was holding their breaths. Just as the man was about to shoot, the woman said, "No, I can't do it. It's too dangerous," throwing the apple on the floor and running away. The man was shocked. He turned to the audience. "Well, this has never happened before. Would anyone like to volunteer? Otherwise, I can't perform my act," he said. As soon as I heard this, I stood up and jumped into the ring before anyone could stop me. I picked up the apple from the floor. I put it on my head. The man was still in a blindfold. "The apple is on my head. Let's see if you can hit it," I said. When the man said, "Aren't you scared? I can't see anything right now. I could shoot you instead of the apple," I said. "No, I'm not. In fact, I don't know what fear is." Then the guy took aim while still in a blindfold. He fired his shot. The arrow flew towards me, cut the apple on my head in 2, and went deep into the wooden panel behind me. At that moment, the man's assistant came back to the ring screaming. The shooter took off the blindfold, saw me, and screamed, "Who are you?" It was only after the fact that we figured out what was really going on. It turned out that the assistants yelling, "I can't do it," and running away was also a part of the act. They would always plant another circus performer in the audience. When she ran away, that person would go up on stage pretending to be a volunteer. Until that day, they never had a regular person volunteer for this. When I ran into the ring, the circus staff thought I was part of the team. Of course, I wasn't. When they figured out I was a real member of the audience, they were really surprised with my bravery. I'm sure you are also curious as to why I did it. The answer is that I have a very rare genetic disorder. I can't feel fear. My parents were very concerned when they learned about what I did at the circus. My mom said, "Kevin, I know it wasn't your fault, but it can't go on like this. We have to take precautions. We've decided to hire bodyguards for you. They will go everywhere with you and prevent you from hurting yourself." This is how my bodyguards, Matt and Sal, came into my life. My dad is a well-known lawyer. His job pays very well. That's how my parents could afford the bodyguards. But I didn't like it at all. You might think having bodyguards is kind of cool, but going everywhere with them, being constantly under their scrutiny, and most importantly, getting all kinds of weird looks from people is definitely not something you should envy. At the same time, I understand my family. Because of my condition, there's a good chance that I would hurt myself. According to some doctors, it's a miracle that I even made it to this age. As you know, our brain manages all of our emotions. Thanks to our brain, we feel happy, surprised, angry, sad, and, of course, scared, too. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. This part is responsible for fear. It also controls worry and stress, which are closely related to fear. And therein lies my problem. My condition prevents the amygdala from functioning properly. In other words, my brain doesn't know what fear is. And since my brain doesn't know what it is, I can't feel it. For example, if a barking dog runs towards me, I don't get scared. Because I'm not scared, it doesn't occur to me that I should run. I'm sure you can guess what might happen in that situation if I don't run. I can hang out in the middle of the night in a dangerous neighborhood without feeling any kind of uneasiness. Let's imagine that while I'm in that neighborhood, someone attacks a woman. The woman screams for help. In such a situation, I would run to help her without thinking twice. Because I'm never afraid, I don't worry about something bad happening to me. I don't feel stressed out when I am about to take an important exam. You might think this is a good thing, but it's not. Because I'm not stressed, I can't prepare properly for the exam. Why? Because I'm not scared of getting a bad grade, and therefore don't feel like I should study hard. This is why I've always been an average student. Doctors figured out I had this condition when I was 7 years old. My family used to think I was just a very brave kid. For example, when my mom said, "We're going to the dentist tomorrow," I would say, "Yay!" My mom liked that I wasn't scared of going to the dentist. One evening, my mom came to my room to call me for dinner. When she saw me, she screamed at the top of her lungs because I was lying in my bed embracing a giant python. I was surprised that my mom was screaming. When my mom said, "Honey, don't be scared. Just get up slowly and come to me," I asked her if I could bring along my friend. The python was the friend I meant. Apparently, one of our neighbors had kept the python as an exotic pet. It somehow escaped and came into my room through my window. I was so happy to see it. It was my first time touching a snake. I played with it for a long time. When I got tired, I laid down holding my new friend. When my mom walked in, she was obviously scared out of her mind to see me hugging a giant snake. After this incident, they thought it was a little weird for me to be this fearless, and they consulted a doctor. After running some tests, the doctors were able to diagnose me. No fear disease is a very rare genetic condition. There are only 400 recorded cases in the world. The pharmaceutical companies don't even bother to do research on possible treatments for this condition. Last year, a professor came to visit us. We're conducting research at the university. If we study this disorder, perhaps we can also develop a cure for it. But in order to be able to do that, we need your help. We need to run extensive tests on Kevin, he said. I gladly said yes, and I'm so happy that I did. The tests were super fun. For one of the tests, we spent a night at a famous haunted house. They knew I wasn't afraid of physical things, but could I be scared by supernatural stuff? They conducted a test to find out. The research team put a special helmet on my head. It recorded my brain activity. If I got scared, there would be movement in my brain's amygdala, which would be picked up by the helmet. One of the doctors on the team told us about the haunted house before we went there. Every night, at midnight, the owners of the house come out and walk around until morning. But there is a problem. They've been dead for over 100 years. They are walking around as ghosts.
Guys, who actually created Poundland? Because whoever it was needs to go back to secondary school. Because man said your shop is called Poundland, but things are not £1. Is your dad related to your mum? You buttered up rapscallion. I don't understand it. Why are you such an inconvenience to me? I still remember the first time I went there by myself. Because you know when you go with your mum, it's different. You're not worried about the prices. You're just a mum, can I get this? And then if you're immigrant, no, not immigrant, sorry. I love this country. Save the Queen God. But if you're ethnic like me, she'll just tell you put it back before she rocket launches a slipper at your face. But I was a young scallywag going to Poundland by myself. And I asked the woman, well, I don't want to assume her gender, but she looked like a, well, actually, guys, don't cancel me. I asked they/them, hi, how much is this? And then the woman, they replied, it's called Poundland. It's £1. Oh, silly mistake. My bad. So I go to the checkout with my 3 items. At this point, I'm feeling amazeballs because I've just gotten a bargain. This woman who I'm sure is on crack cocaine. She's so happy and enthusiastic. She's just told me I can get all of this for £1 each. So I go to the checkout and beep, beep, beep. They scan all my items. And then the guy goes, your total is £4, sir. What the flip? Isn't it Einstein? Can you do maths? 1 + 1 + 1 is 3. Now I'm confused. You burnt piece of sponge cake. Why are you trying to scam me, mate? What'd I do to ya? So I tell him, no, sir, it's £3. 111, £3. He goes to me, no, sir, it's £4 actually. I've done the maths. Oh, okay, calm down, Stephen Hawkins. So I go back to the woman and I find her, which by the way was hard enough. This woman was playing hide and seek with me. I find her and I say, excuse me. Hi. Hi, you crackhead. Why did you lie to me? Whatever do you mean, sir? Why did you tell me that it's £3 but it's £4? Oh, no, sir, it's Poundland. At Poundland, we round to £1. Listen here, Eminem. Why are you rapping? Guys, according to 50 Cent over here, it is called Poundland because it's rounded to £1.